The word drug stands for any natural or artificially made chemical that is taken for pleasure. To do drugs is then consuming them. This phenomenon affects 200 million people every year, and the monetary value of the economic activity associated with it is estimated around $1.8 trillion worldwide. Drugs cause addiction, and this rush for drugs leads to high crime rates, especially in depressed areas. This key issue to our society, due to its major implications, has constituted the focus of study of many psychologists, sociologists, and even criminologists. In 2004, however, Becker published a paper on the subject under the name of the Economic Theory of Illegal Goods, the case of drugs, in which he approaches it from an economic point of view. The study itself analyzes the market for drugs as a paradigmatic example of an illegal good. He basically theorizes and finds a way to mathematize the behavior of both consumers and producers, and how they do react to government punishment, in order to find out how the state should really regulate drug consumption. To do so, Becker establishes some variables like Q, standing for consumption, P, for price to consumers, F, for monetary equivalent of punishment to drug dealers, C, for cost of production of the product, A, for expenditures of avoidance of enforcement, and E, for a level of government enforcement. Through these variables, he creates mathematical formula to determine, for instance, how do punishments affect the market. As he puts it, if the government increases its spending in fighting drugs, E, as producers have to be more careful to not be detected, this is going to raise the expenditure and avoidance of enforcement, A, which, added to the production cost, C, and the calculated cost of the assumption of the possibility of being arrested, F, determines an increase in prices to the consumer, P. According to laws of supply and demand, the higher the price, the lower the demand. But if we take into consideration the elasticity of the demand, the more inelastic, the harder it is going to be to influence their behavior, and therefore, the greater the government expenditure required to effectively reduce drug consumption. On the other hand, if demand is more elastic and, as such, more responsive to price changes, a far smaller expenditure will be enough. Getting back to that formula, if instead of hardening enforcement, the government increases the severity of punishment, this will equally raise the price for the consumer, as producers are going to ask for more money to justify the risk they assume. But regarding the profits by drug producers, this measure will very probably make them grow, as only those few who got caught would suffer the consequences of the greater punishment, while all others would benefit from bigger margins. Both measures reduce overall drug consumption, but the effects of each one greatly differ from each other, making it even more noticeable with a big market elasticity. Let's put it this way. This is Ron. Ron is what we used to call a drug dealer. That basically means that he makes a living out of selling drugs. Given that the government has a strong policy in reducing drug consumption, the police makes a very important effort to catch drug dealers such as Ron. In order to be able to get the produce, Ron has to get all his merchandise from a hidden cultivation located in a basement, using artificial sunlight, very expensive. Then, he has to transport it extremely carefully so as not to be spotted by the police or by nosy neighbors. And, finally, when getting it to his consumers, he always makes an appointment and limits the amount distributed, aiming not to be detected. All these things means he spends and doesn't get quite some money just for carrying out his activity. Let's say the police increases the number of patrols. In this case, as Ron is going to have to be much more careful and buy some new equipment not to be detected, this is going to increase the final price. If, however, the Parliament passes a tougher law on drugs, increasing the years of punishment from 1 to 5, Ron will also increase drug price as to compensate the possibility of getting caught. In the second case, on the other hand, the rise in price doesn't account for an expense, as if Ron doesn't get caught, he will make bigger margins. Today, Ron is receiving one of his most loyal customers, Frank. Frank is addicted to cocaine, and right now he is in great dependency, so he will buy it even if the price gets very high. So Frank is an inelastic customer. That translates into the fact that the government is going to have to be much tougher in order to deter Frank from buying drugs. If Frank wasn't that addicted, a much slighter approach with a less drastic increase in price would deter him. In that case, Frank would be what is called an elastic consumer. But the level of dependency doesn't depend on the government. So what is then the solution Becker offers to this problem? How should the state intervene in this market? By analyzing the effects of elasticity, Becker demonstrates that spending and enforcement and punishments is only economically justifiable in very few situations, leading to the assumption that in most societies, the approach to drugs, nor is it efficient market-wise, neither fully gets to its desired objective on prevention. Rather, he points to the legalization of drugs along with monetary taxation, just as is done with cigarettes or alcohol. The tax, due to its nature, would increase the price, but for consumers, it would still be more competitive than if the price of drugs were to be illegal. For the producers, on the other hand, as higher standards and specific taxes on production may be required, this will leave out of the legal market a lot of the current producers. Moreover, taxation will produce a very considerable revenue for the government, which could be used to impose quality controls, reducing then the drug-related health issues while funding the war on black market. And remember, don't do drugs, children.